Morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you're watching this. This is day 2 of the 12 Days of Birth Stories series. Today we're going to be talking with Becky about her 4-day birth extravaganza. And I'm really excited to unpack her story and to learn more about her experience. If you've never met me before, my name is Nessa Hayes. I'm a clinical herbalist, a birth keeper, energy healer, a mom, and I created this project because I found that even in the community gatherings that I do, women didn't have enough time to tell their birth stories. There's never enough time to really share the whole thing from top to bottom, or to unpack the parts that she was, concerned with or that she really loved. And I just kept hearing women share that they needed space to tell these stories. And so I created this kind of on a whim. And I thought, we'll pull in that 12 days marketing ploy and get people interested in coming to check out all of these amazing stories. So we're just waiting for Becky to pop into the live. I might have to invite her. Let's see. Becky is. It's going to be interesting. And I'm sitting on the ground today, nice and grounded. I've got 2 dogs behind me. Just like I said yesterday, if you tuned in yesterday, anything goes. Anything goes. So we could have barking dogs. We could have loud babies. Who knows? So let's pull her in now. And fingers crossed, as always, that this technology thing works. So as we're talking with Becky, please feel free to pop your questions in the chat. That worked really well yesterday. And as I see them and as they make sense to her telling the story, I will pull them into the conversation. So let us know where you're from in the comments too, because I know not everybody's from the same city. So it'd be really cool to see. Okay, accept. And this is our second time doing this. So let's see if we can get it to work. Okay, there we go.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. I know. I'm just getting set up here, and there's trinkets that I'm knocking over.
I said anything goes, so do what you must to
I
make it
hope there's
work.
not too much noise in the background. Let me know if you can hear me okay.
Yeah, sounds good so far. I
Okay,
think
cool.
everybody else can let us know if it doesn't sound right either.
Awesome.
Okay, so I called your story a 4-day birth saga.
Yes.
Does that feel accurate?
That was accurate, yes.
Okay. So this is your first birth experience. So walk us through maybe what were your thoughts going into preparing for giving birth? Where did you want to give birth?
Well, okay, so maybe this is controversial to say. I'm going to just dive right in.
Perfect.
COVID actually made me really reconsider where I wanted to give birth. I guess it was just a sign of the times, really.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that was exposed through COVID and everything I learned about the problems with our healthcare system and just systems at large
Yeah.
just really made me rethink what the hell we're doing in hospitals and why so many women just fall into this perceived notion of safety in that setting, because everything I learned the previous 4 years, it just showed me the opposite. And when I learned I was pregnant, I was like, well, shit, I guess I can't go to a hospital for this because I know too much. I can't. So
You
that's
can't unsee what you've heard and what you've thought about, and
exactly. Yeah. So, yeah, that's really just that was my initial thought. And then when I thought about it a little more deeply, I was kind of reflecting on my maternal grandmother, my name is Healy. She had 14 babies.
Oh my
all of
God.
them at home except one.
Wow.
And the only time that she had to go give birth at a hospital was for her youngest. And that was because the midwife in their community retired. So,
Oh, okay.
yeah. And she was over the age of 40, which I think was another like concern, I guess, they had for her at the
Right.
time. And so I thought, if she did that back then, I could do it now.
Yeah.
So that was another like layer to my motivation. So she was one of my birth affirmations that I had taped up around my house. It just said,
Like a
Nanny
pic.
Healy, 14.
Okay. Oh, that's really cool. I like that. It's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
wanted
So
to give birth at home instead of the hospital.
yes. Yeah. I entertained the idea of going to a birth center.
Hmm.
That was like my backup plan. So I had the option with the midwife team that I was with. I had the option to do either Coburg or Markham Stouffville, and I had heard a lot of like really positive things about Markham Stouffville, and I didn't. I should have probably toured it, but I didn't. I don't know. I guess maybe I was just like, no, I'm not. I'm not going to be doing that. So it's not even a factor. So yeah, I don't know. It was my plan B, but it was like my very like distant plan B because I was like, no, it's not happening. That's not
Yes.
what I'm doing. So yeah. So yeah. So it was home for me. I mean, I think it was like day 3 or it must have been day 4 because it was the midwife came that day and I was totally done. My mind was running something that a friend of mine had said, and she was like, "Yeah, I just went to the hospital, had an epidural. It was great. It was so fun. Like it was easy." And that was in my mind on like the end of my trek, and
Right.
I was like, "I don't care what happens. Cut this baby out of me." I was so done by the end of it because my labor
Yeah.
had gone on for so many days at that point. And I had like very little gas in the tank and I was exhausted and I was just done with it all and I didn't care what was going to happen, but I didn't want to be in labor anymore. And so
Mhm.
I told my husband that this would happen, that I would hit this point and I would be like, take me to the hospital, please. I
Right.
can't do it anymore. And then he was like, so I told him that I was going to hit that point. And when I hit that point, you just have to figure out a way to like Jedi mind trick me into remembering the plan,
Hmm.
remember the plan. And so he was actually such a genius. He was like, yeah, you want to go to the hospital? Okay, sure. Yeah. Yeah, let's do it. We're going to go. And so he's like, my sister was there. Get her, pack her bag. Like I didn't even have a bag packed. Because that's how I was not going to the hospital. And so my sister actually packed a bag for me and I went to go get out into our car. I couldn't even sit down in the back seat. I was like, oh, I can't do this. How am I going to go all the way to Markham Stouffville? I can't. I live in Oshawa, so I'm like, it's too far. I'm not going to make it. Like, so that was out. So then it was like, then my husband was like, yeah, see, okay, so we're going to have this baby and we're going to do it right here. And we're going to do it today. I'm like, yes, we are.
Jedi mind trick.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. So after that, I did several laps outside in the backyard. It was a beautiful day. It was so sunny and like warm. And yeah, just, I don't know how many laps I was doing. I don't know how many hours I was out there. It felt like
So
a really
this is
long time. Like,
day. So let's pause. So what day was this
this
of your
would
birth?
have been, so Miles was born just like 25 minutes after midnight, which would have been, I think, that technically would have been day 4. So this would
Okay.
have been like day 3,
Okay.
afternoon, day 3.
So let's pause there for a second. So we
Yeah.
kind of have this idea of, it was a long time. You got kind of, your energy was super, super white.
Yeah.
Your partner came in and helped you like hold it down as to what your value system was, what your plan was. And then you kind of started it up again. But like, take us back. So what were some of the first, so you knew you wanted to have a home birth. So was your team on board with that? Like, did you
Yeah.
have to do
Yeah.
anything? Okay.
No,
Was there any?
they were very supportive. And I had said from like the very beginning, because I'm sure a lot of women have like this idea that they want to have a home birth, and then when it comes down to it, like it's just not for them or whatever, and that's okay. And so the way I framed it for myself and like for anyone who I had conversations with about it, I was always like, I accept whatever's meant for me. Like if I'm meant to have Miles at home, like I want that, like I will accept that. But if it has to be somewhere else, I accept that too. Because I didn't want to get in my own way. Like, you know what I mean? Like I just didn't want to psych myself up for something that maybe I would feel disappointed about later. And I had heard stories about that where people would just like talk about sort of this virtue that people have around home birth and like, but I feel like that's unfair a little bit.
Almost like purity culture around it.
Yeah. And so I don't feel that way at all. And it's just really the place that like I felt most safe, truly. And so I said, anytime the conversation came up, I was like, I just accept whatever's meant for me. This is my goal, but I accept whatever is meant to happen. So that was kind of how that was like what I told myself for like 9 months.
And your partner, was he on board with home birth? Did he have any reservations?
Oh yeah. Initially he was like, you're nuts. Like, what are you talking about? Like he thought I was insane. And I was just like, yeah, like this is what I feel like is right for me. And I brought up a lot of like just the arguments that or the points that I had made in my own mind of like why it made sense for me. And and then he was like, okay, well, I mean, I'm not gonna, it's your call. Like, this is you. Like, this is your show. Like, I'm just like the supporting actor here. And so he took part in a lot of the things that I did to like prepare for birth.
Okay.
He did the hypnobirthing workshop with me.
Amazing.
Yeah, so he heard a lot of like things like, so he was more on board like because he was now hearing what I was hearing. And so I think it helped him understand. And actually he read a book, my birth companion. I also had a birth companion in addition to my midwifery team.
It's a great book actually for partners.
She provided him like a whole little care package essentially of like, which I thought was really thoughtful, and he really appreciated too actually. And he also
that's a conversation. Sorry, I was just gonna say that's a conversation we've had in our like radical mother gatherings. Is how a man feels as a father, but like in this context, sounds like she really pulled him into the mix, and you also made sure like, okay, I want to do this hypnobirthing class. I want you to come with me, and he was on board with that. Which I feel like often you hear that men are like, okay, I'll support you in your decision, but like that's it. That's the extent.
Yeah.
They don't really do this preparation work alongside their partner.
Yeah. I mean, I was very open. Like I said to him, like, come to whatever you want to come to. Like, I'm not going to pressure you. Like, the invitation is open if you want. And he did. He took me up on it. Like, he came to like a number of the midwife appointments with me. He was there for like some meetings that I had with my birth companion. So he was in that mix. And so hearing the support that was there for like doing this home birthing. But I also said to him, and I think this was a big part of like what I did to prepare, like in terms of like addressing my fears, I had to go for information. I had to figure out like, what am I getting myself into? And so for me, like it was kind of like I just learned a lot about myself in the sense that like the way we address fears, and maybe this is different for everybody, but for me, I just looked for information. I like read books. I listened to podcasts. I met all these different like people in the birth world and like had conversations with them. And so that helped me get over those fears.
What do you think they were? Like, do you think, because I have a sense of what I think like a root, like a common denominator one is like the unknown. Like, do you think that information kind of helps fill those gaps of I don't know.
Yeah. I think a lot of people think that birth is an emergency because of our like conditioning and like maybe what we see in movies and just culturally. or that like, you know, we're all like these little like unique situations, that all these random crazy like minute things, or not minute, but like these one-off things are going to happen to us. And like
Right.
I just kept telling myself like, you're not that special, girl. Like you're not. Like it's
You're not a
just
special little snowflake.
no, like that's what I really tried to like remember, because like I feel like when we do hear horror stories, it is like the very small like percentage of people, and when you actually like understand some of the numbers, you realize like
Mm-hmm.
what are the odds of this actually happening to me. Like I learned like what my birth story was. I learned like what happened with my mom, like with me and my sister when she had us. Like I watched my sister you know, give birth 3 times,
Mm-hmm.
so wasn't there for
What
the
a good
second or the
foundation.
third one. Yeah. So I
Yeah.
had a good, like, yeah. But it's funny. I feel like that also psyched me out for what I was expecting for my own birth. Because
Yes. Yeah.
then mine lasted so friggin' long, and I didn't see that coming at all.
Yeah. So how do you, so you did compile these like different versions of birth, and you compiled a lot of information about the true risk of, you know, scenario A, B, C, and D,
Yeah.
but you still weren't prepared for 4 days of this
Yeah.
journey.
That threw me
Mhm.
for a loop. There was like not a number of moments where I was like at my wit's end. It was like it got to be like a real mental game for me on probably like day 2, day 3. I remember at one point, I can't remember what day this was. It was probably like, I want to say it was like day 3. It was like morning, and I was in the middle of the like my living room where we had the birth pool set up, and I was just like, this isn't gonna happen. This isn't happening. Like, and so that was when my birth companion, um, I think she had called her backup to come. I don't know if it was day 2 or day 3. I get all the days mixed up.
Okay. Yeah.
Because I was just in like another dimension, um, but you know, in and out of it, in and out of it. So yeah, when she called her backup, she came and just like got me moving in different positions. The woman I originally hired, her, I would say, ethos or style is really to like have the woman lead. Like, so she's kind of following your cue. So what it is that, what position does she want to be in? And she's just sort of like going off of that. But where I was a first time mom, I felt like I needed a little bit more direction.
Yes.
And when I was like
Especially that far
so
in.
many, yeah, that far in, I wanted someone to be like, okay, let's try this. Okay, let's do this. Like,
Tell me what to do.
I wanted that direction for sure. And so it was interesting because like with my birth experience, like I got to experience 2 different styles of birth companions,
Mhm.
which actually taught me a lot too. It's really interesting. So yeah.
About yourself, you mean? About what you need?
Yeah, what I need, and even just like how these women like help
Hmm.
women in labor and help them with birth and stuff like that, like is pretty cool to see that, to see them like when I think back and like them in action, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
um
Right.
yeah, and how like, I mean, I'm cautious of like going into like this like savior, like we all need a savior or something. I don't, I really, that wasn't my mindset, because like I was taking responsibility for my birth experience, and whatever that meant, I accepted the outcomes either way.
I like
And
the word guidance.
yeah,
Mhm.
that's a perfect word for it. Yeah. So when I
Because
think
you
back
just need
on that,
a tool. Like you just need another idea, or you just need some
exactly.
reassurance or validation, or
Yep.
like normalization. Like, hey, this is normal. You know, I know it's day whatever, but it's okay. You're
Yeah.
still good, and
I don't
you can
remember
still do
anyone
this.
telling me it was normal.
Oh, shoot.
But
It's a very
I probably
normal.
could have used that. Yeah. This happens all the time. Well, I did hear
Not just
after.
you.
I did hear after the fact. Actually, my midwife team, the woman who was there, like from my midwife team for my house's birth, she did say like, you know, this does happen, like first time moms especially.
Yeah.
You know, the baby's gotta pave the way kind of thing. So
Yeah, and what I think about this like version of birth is that I actually think that, because in Western medicine it gets broken down into all this terminology of like, is it precipitous, which means super fast? Is it like prodromal labor when you're like starting and stopping, starting and stopping?
Oh,
But
I think that was
I
me
think,
then.
well, I think a lot of women actually experience this without even realizing it. Because I think the
Oh,
body, my theory anyway, is that most women's bodies are doing this all the time, like leading up to birth, maybe a month before, maybe 3 weeks,
right.
2 weeks, maybe a couple days. And depending on the position of your baby or how you experience discomfort, your mental state, your nervous system, all the things, you either feel that really strongly and get into it or you don't. And then
Mm.
and then you hear those stories of women who are like, oh, contractions started and then my birth was 5 hours long. And
Aaron,
it's like, I'm
Aaron,
curious. Yeah,
yesterday I was
Aaron.
like, get out of here, girl. Easy
And so it makes
breezy.
me really curious to be like, well, maybe you were actually in labor way before that. Your body was already doing that work. You just weren't physically aware of it happening. Because birth is kind of
Maybe,
abstract,
yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
it's
Well,
internal.
yeah. I mean, I've heard like the term Braxton Hicks, like these like preparation contractions. I don't think I experienced that though, because although maybe this contributes to my long labor, in my mind, I totally thought that I had this feeling that Miles was going to be born like right at the end of August. And so
Mm,
I think it was like, what was it, like the 28th or whatever, whenever my labor started. It was like the Monday. He was born on just after midnight on the Friday. My labor started that night, on Monday night. Like
wow.
we were actually building a cat tower. Jesse and
I was
I,
like
my husband.
a scratching post. And yeah,
Yeah,
okay, got it.
yeah. And I all of a sudden I just like didn't feel right. I felt like really icky and off, and I was like, I just need to go to bed. Like, and I am also not someone who like rests. I'm not like a napper
Mm-hmm.
or anything like that. And so if like I'm like I don't feel good, and he's like, oh okay, yeah, you really don't feel good. If I was like dropping
Yeah.
everything and like going and lying down, he like knew something was up. So that was around like 10:30, I want to say, at night, and so I guess I slept through the night. I think it was the next day, like that's when we started, because they were like really picking up, and then they would slow down, and then they would pick
Mm-hmm.
up, and
Mm-hmm.
then I'm sure a lot of women have done this, but like you download this app to time your contractions,
Yeah.
and big mistake, big
Gets
mistake.
in your head. Gets in
Yeah,
your head.
because it's
Yeah.
like pack your bag, get ready, go to the hospital, and I'm like, oh my god, it's gonna happen, it's
Mm-hmm.
happening, and then it didn't happen.
With my first birth, I know this is your story, but just to validate that, I went to
Yeah.
the hospital 3 times.
Mm.
3 times I walked to the hospital. I think the last
Walked.
time we
You
drove.
walked?
It was right around the corner. I lived in
Oh,
Halifax, right around the corner.
okay.
And I was like, this is perfect for,
Yeah,
getting the
yeah.
baby
Get labor
closer.
going. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. But I went 3 times because of this stupid contraction timer app that said it was time to go.
Right.
It was not
Yeah.
time to
No,
go.
no. Yeah, I learned a lot in those moments, in those days.
Yeah, so it gets in your head. So do you feel like yours was more this prolonged experience? Do you feel like because you mentioned it was a mental game? Do you feel like that was
Yeah.
your stop?
Sorry, you cut out there.
Was that your like what do you think came into play with like the starting and stopping?
I don't know. Like, truly, like, obviously, it was my body, like, just taking its time to open. But also, like I said, I was like, I thought for sure he was going to come on like the last day of August or something, like right around the end of August. And I had thought that my entire pregnancy, for whatever reason, my due date, my expected date or whatever, was September 2nd. So he wasn't far off. He was born on the 1st.
Okay.
So yeah. So I don't know why I just thought end of August. I just had that weird, I don't know. I just told myself that. So maybe that was it. Maybe that was me being like, no, it's happening. It's happening now. And like, I remember
Mm-hmm.
after my sister was like, yeah, like you should just like bake muffins or something. And I'm like, why didn't you tell me this? So many moments. I think everyone was just
Well,
like excited, right? Like everyone
yes,
was,
of course.
yeah.
It is
Yeah. So
exciting and special and like yeah, people are waiting and ready to meet him. Yeah.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's a lot to to feel when you're trying to do this thing.
Oh yeah. Big time.
Alex says you're a radical mama.
I love that. That's so nice. I'm trying.
And we're unpacking a lot of things in our chat, like what does a due date even mean, right? You know, like a guest date. Even when I was creating some forms on my website, I was like, oh, I hate due date. Like, what else can I use?
Call it something else. Yeah, I know. I struggled with that when I was like pregnant, when I was talking to people, because they would ask me, I got that question all the time. I'm sure every pregnant woman does. What do you do? And it's like, I started reframing like how I would answer it. And I'm like, well, they tell me beginning of September, but he'll come when he's ready, I guess. Like, I was always like, yeah, we'll see. Like, who knows, right?
That's
so
fun.
yeah, I just like, it's funny. I feel like I like peppered some things into like people's lives, like whenever just like a random stranger would ask me like a question about being like pregnant or is it your first, or like all these like things that women get, right? Which was really, it was sweet. Like I've heard stories of women like, oh my god, like they just hate like people asking all these questions. Like, they're just being like nice, you know, like they're showing interest in like obviously your beautiful state. Like they want to, you know, I think it's nice that people ask questions, and so I would just take the opportunity to give an honest answer.
Yeah, of course you would.
Yeah, exactly.
Put it in.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's cool. I think it's good to make people think. It's an interesting time when it comes to like women's bodies and commenting on women's bodies. But I feel like we're coming back to like an honoring of pregnancy and motherhood. And that's a cool opportunity to engage with someone who really does feel the feels for you and is like, oh my God, it's so special because they're probably a parent as well, right? And you get it.
Yeah,
Or they want to
totally.
be a parent, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah.
Really
And
beautiful.
even like a couple of times, like with strangers, like the topic of, oh, like what hospital are you going to go to? And I was like, I'm not
Mm.
going to one. That's my plan. And actually, I met a few people who were like, I did a home birth too, and that was cool. I remember this one elderly woman. She had home births, and she was on the same side. Yeah, yeah. She knew what I was going for. So that was really cool. Yeah.
It's like we need, I joke sometimes, it feels a little bit culty, but like you kind of want to have like a secret handshake or something because it's a cool club to be in because it's a very unique experience that we want more women to experience and more families to have birth at home because it does have better outcomes.
Yeah.
If you can, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. But it's just like, it's interesting because like when like Jesse and I talk about like that whole like experience, like his whole side of the story is like, oh my God, but it was so much work. Like it is a lot of work on the
preparing the
people.
space, keeping
Yeah.
it clean and ready.
Loads of laundry, right? Like, I mean, my situation, I get not everyone is in like labor for that long, so maybe it's a little bit like less
Extended.
work. But also
You
like
want to talk about
the mental load of it all too, for like the people who are there to support you.
Can you talk about who you wanted to be in your birth space? Because I think that's really unique as well. Who
Yeah.
did you want to have?
So I knew like 100% Jesse. He wanted to be there. Like he wanted to be an active participant in everything. And uh, we we had talked a lot about like, you know, just being a useful human, which is a line that Billy Harrigan uses all the time. I took her birth workshop actually, and she
Right.
talks about like, you know, just be a useful human. And so that was like what he was gonna do. And I knew like I wanted my sister there, just because
Yep.
like she had done this and I had been there for her, two of her births. And after that, I was like my birth companion, obviously, and then it was like, Mom, do you want to come? Like, I don't know, do you? Like, my mom was, she actually looked scared shitless most days, because I think she just didn't see like all this like extended labor coming,
Yeah.
and I think she just really like felt, she just fell for me, you know, in those moments of like being in such despair at times. I'm like, is this gonna happen? Am I gonna birth this baby today, tomorrow? Like when? You know, it was hard. It was taxing on
And
everyone.
seeing you also in a state of, you know, so much energy output, and like, I don't know if she talked to you afterwards, if she was open to that. Like, did she feel helpless? You know, like, I feel like I would, of course, I'm like birth keeper doula lady. If my kids have kids, I'm going to be right up in there. But I feel like that'd be so hard
A
to
lot.
let go and
Yeah.
surrender and watch you go through this life altering thing, especially for that long.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, I it's funny because like birth is also very physical, and so
So
like
physical.
so physical, and like I was just like leaning on anyone who was nearby. I was just like hanging off them, and like
Give me a
my
body.
yeah. And my poor mother is like this tiny little woman, and I was afraid to actually like lean on her physically because I was like, I will snap you in half.
You.
Yeah, yeah. And so I like she was just loving. She was just like a loving energy there. And I mean, she got a lot of that footage I sent you. Like that was a lot of
Oh,
her.
good job,
Yeah.
Mom. Yeah, it's so
I think
beautiful.
she was just
Makes
like,
me
what
want to
else do I
cry.
do? Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. What else do I do? And then I think it was like day three, a very good family friend of ours. You've met her. She came to our conscious birth event back in November. Val, she had had 3 home births. And
Okay.
I think one day she checked in with my sister to be like, "How's it all going over there? Like, is there anything I can do?" And my sister was like, "Val wants to know if there's anything she can bring you or do." Or and I'm like, "Tell her to
Mm.
come. Just tell her to come." And so I think I did a number of laps with Val around the backyard. Because again, it was just like, I mean, in a sense, it was probably good that I had so many people there because
Hmm.
everyone took turns.
Yeah,
So
and then
everyone
they
took
could
take a
have
break.
relief and recharge their batteries in order to show
Exactly.
up for you, right?
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
amazing.
Yeah, so I think that probably helped to have like, you know, everyone kind of circling in and out. But yeah, I remember
Did
at
Val
one
talk
point.
to you about home birth? Like, did she help pump you up
Yeah,
for?
yeah, like I had heard her birth stories like from her and her husband, and she also like loaned me I think the hypnobirthing book. She gave me that, and she was like, "You should maybe check this out." And that's how I kind of learned about that. And then I found someone local, Mindful Mama Hypnobirthing, and I took her course. And
Amazing.
yeah, and that was interesting. It was cool. It was like Erin kind of talked about this yesterday, like very much like preparing you mentally, which she kind of attributed to like her yoga practice. And
Hmm.
I haven't like been into yoga my whole life or anything like that, but I have always been into like sort of like, you know, getting your mental game right. And so that attracted me to like learn more about hypnobirthing and all that. Um, but yeah, it's like I remember at one point, I think this was like this was like the night, this was like the evening like leading up to like when he was actually born.
Hmm.
Like we were all like in the birth, I was in the birth pool, and like I was just in it, and like all I could hear was like the chatter behind me like in my living room, and I was like, can you guys shut up? Like it was it was so distracting. And Val was like sitting in front of me, and she was just like locked in
Hmm.
with me. Like I was, all I looked at was her, and she was like in my face, like really close up, like so in my
Hmm.
face, and just like kind of coaching in a sense.
Yeah.
Um, and it was so helpful. It was that I really needed like that focus, I think, in those moments, even though like, you know, it was great that I had so many people there to like support.
Cheer you on, and yeah.
When I was in the thick of it, I really needed to like hone in and just like lock in, you know, with what I was feeling and breathing through it and remembering how to breathe through it and all of that stuff.
Hmm.
So
And
yeah.
staying in the zone, right? We talked about that
Yes.
yesterday. Staying
Yeah.
in the zone.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's I call that person um like the protector of the hormones,
Yeah.
because they're allowing
Ooh.
you. Yeah, I really like that. I did a lot of research on the hormone flow during birth, and it's so crucial to keeping things going in a productive way.
Yes,
And so
yeah.
whoever that person is, I always say to my clients, like, whoever you'll listen to in the room, I don't care if it's me, if it's a nurse, if it's a doctor, if it's your partner, if it's a random stranger, I don't care. But if
Yeah.
you want to listen to them, then the rest of us are and you just focus on them, because that's what's going to get you through.
I love that, Nessa. I think that's so important. And I think for any women who might like look at using your services like as a doula, I think like you just saying that, women, especially first time moms, need to know how important that is, because that was something that I really like dove into learning about, was like, what is like this symphony of hormones going on when you're in labor and you've chosen not to do any epidural or anything like that. Yeah, like for me, understanding like scientifically like what is going on in my body was really helpful. And you just like sort of close the loop on it. Like having someone be aware of those things and like be able to protect that that's chef's
It's
kiss.
key.
Like, that's so
Absolutely.
key. Oh yeah.
Because we're still it's like we're relearning and remembering how to give birth as women, like collectively.
Well, Rachel Reed has this amazing part in her book, the Birth as a Rite of Passage. And she talks about how whether or not you know what's going on, your body knows what's going on. Your body's going to do the thing, regardless of if you understand it or not. And that was like such a moment for me when I was like this, like all the like sort of wheels were turning and everything was kind of like clicking into place. I was like, whoa, like that is so true. Like a sneeze. Like we might not understand like why we're sneezing, but your body's gonna just do it anyway. And I think that's so cool. And it also kind of touches back on like just trusting your body.
Yes.
Which I think a lot of people maybe lose that a bit when like they defer
care providers or even to other women. Sometimes, like you were saying, that one of your support, your attendants was like, you lead the way because you know, and your body knows, and I fully trust that. But then you as a woman needed to get out of your head to let that process happen. And so the other version of the birth attendant was able to get you out of your head, right? So there's all these kind of moving pieces in terms of what one woman may need. You know, what works for one may not work for another, and that's why you do the work first to try and understand, but you never know until you're in it.
It's so true. Yeah, it's so true. And like that's the thing too. Like, I mean, now that I've done it, like holy cow, you learn so much about yourself, about just what our bodies are capable of. And that's like like so cool in and of itself. But for first time moms, especially, like I got this line a lot because I wanted a home birth and it was my first one, and people were like, "What? You're nuts! Like what? That's crazy." But like I just was like, no, like I'm gonna do the work. And I did the work, but then like nothing prepares you for like the real deal. Like I mean some stuff does, obviously. Like I had a foundation. The first time I watched like birth, like I think I was a couple months pregnant. I was like, well, I guess I better rip the Band-Aid off and watch a birth video. Like I had never even seen what it really like looked like, other than like my sister. But like I was behind her. So I didn't really know what was happening, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, like I just had to kind of dive in, and that's kind of funny too, is like the first time I actually like see like a real birth is like, oh, I'm a couple months pregnant, so I better like, because I think I just had a lot of fear. It was like a lot of fear. Well,
that's what I mean.
Gonna happen to my body.
Abstract. It's like it is physiological, and we should know these things. We should see like how does a vagina and like how does your vulva do that? You know, it's really cool when you get to witness it.
It is really cool, and it's actually like it's kind of like an accordion, like the way I kind of look at it. Like it's just like there's all these like our flower. That's nice too. That's really
I swear,
nice
like I know it sounds really like, oh, that's so beautiful, and like that's not really what really happens, but one of my first ever births that I photographed, her tissue totally opened like a flower.
Whoa.
And I was like, it's true. It's true.
Wow.
I mean, everybody's different as well. Everybody is very different down there, especially during pregnancy with blood flow and pressure. But no, hers was a beautiful flower.
Well, that's nice for
Good
her.
for her,
See,
right?
So I actually learned after from my midwife that like part of my cervix was like in the way, which I mean, in the way, I just hadn't fully like opened yet. And that was what was like partially causing like such a delay. But she said it's also very common. Like she told me that after the fact, that it's very common with first time moms. And I had questioned if it was potentially like scar tissue that was getting in the way, only because like I had to have like a laser leap.
I was gonna say, did you have the leap procedure? Yeah.
Yeah. Many years ago, like really long time ago. But I was like, I questioned, like, I wonder if that was part of it. She said probably not, but she just said it's very common for like that to happen with first time moms. So
yeah. So when you have that cervical lip, Chelsea just said, "Oh, the joyful cervical lip."
Okay.
So like if this is your cervix,
I can feel the pain.
A baby's head
swiping that away. Yeah, like this is what happened to me. At one point,
so
my midwife was like up there, and I'm like, oh, it was actually excruciating. Like I wouldn't wish that upon anyone.
So babies' heads are supposed to come down a certain way and put pressure evenly around your cervix, like evenly. But our modern day lives, we sit on our phones, we sit on our computers, we sit in our cars, we sit on our couches. And so our pelvis is often not well aligned to birth our babies, and our babies inside of our pelvis don't often come like directly down into the middle. So sometimes their heads come down and they like hang out on the pelvis, like on the bones, until they figure out a little maneuver, and then they go into the inlet. But then even on your cervix, maybe their head is still at a funky angle, and so they're not putting equal pressure on all sides of the cervix. So oftentimes, because of the way that we don't prepare physically for birth and make those adjustments to the pelvis, and it's really hard to do in our modern world, the cervix will thin and dilate at different rates across the circle, and so that might have been what you were experiencing.
I did pelvic floor. I did the pelvic floor physiotherapy. I did like yoga, like I don't know, like I was like, what more could I have done? I don't really know.
Well, no, and that's the thing, that's like it's probably also a mix of our genetics now too, right? Like we've lost so much of what a healthy lifestyle is, and we're seeing a lot of more random complications in birth that they are attributing to our, like, for me, again, the research and thoughts that I've done is a lot around like pelvic positioning and babies inside. That it's just a mismatch. But you can do things like changing positions are game changers for women, because they let your baby, gravity takes over. They get to that part of your cervix they weren't working on yet. They wiggle their little heads or whatever part of their body, and then bingo bango, we're in active, like, progressing labor. So
well, that was like that.
You don't know.
No, I mean, of
You
course, but I mean,
you can't know for sure.
Totally. Well, I was definitely like in different positions. I found like the birth pool. It was funny. My midwife at one point noticed like how much my labor slowed when I was in the water.
Yes, very common as well.
Then, but I don't know. I think it just gave me so much relief, like just having that warm water like on me. Oh my God. And I mean, it was nice, but then at the same time, I was like, I just want to get the show on the road here. Like, I was just like so over all of this. Like, I want to be done with this. And so I was like, at that point, I was like, I'll do whatever. Like, what are we doing? What position? Like, my knees were so sore. Oh my God. At one point, I didn't send you this footage, but there is a clip of me naked. I think I have my baby's top off. And I've got knee pads on.
Nice.
Very so sexy.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. But yeah, like knee pads in the birth pool, because this was another thing. So I think on maybe day 3, Jesse like ran out to Canadian Tire to get like a foam mattress to like put underneath the birth pool, because my knees and my legs, like everything was just so sore, because it like so physically, like, or so, yeah, like the labor is so physical that it was like, you just don't really you underestimate like how much, like where you're going to hurt.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, like Aaron was talking about, you know, kind of worrying about being exhausted. I was so exhausted. I was so tired, like so done. I think one of the clips I actually I sent you, I'm like passed out. I'm like asleep in between like a contraction. I remember at one point my birth companion gave me like a Sour Patch Kid or something, and I had like a good meal on like day 2. Jesse made like this amazing Greek like chicken. It was like the best Greek food I've ever had, and he just like made it. And I still remember it to this day. It was so good. And then we had sushi another day. And then I don't think I really like ate much on like the day 3. And she popped me like this Sour Patch Kid, and it was just an explosion in my mouth. Like I had never tasted something like that before. It was just like, I don't know if I was just like dehydrated or what, but it was just like, what is this? Like it was so crazy.
Sugar, yeah.
Yeah.
That's citric acid.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. Like, again, such a range of tools and like tricks and things that they did that like really I found like actually helpful. Like, I remember Jesse was making fun of me. He's like, if I have to talk about essential oils like one more time, but like clary sage, holy
yeah,
crap.
you've spoken about that.
Yeah,
So that was
like
a
when I was like finally like we were like doing the thing, and I was like, you know, bringing Miles down and like pushing him down and stuff. And I was like, at that point we were out of the birth pool. I delivered him in my bedroom on my bed, like in the very unfortunate position of stranded beetle, I believe is what it is called.
Oh God. Stranded beetle. So that's on your back with your limbs and everything in the air. Oh,
no,
okay. Wow.
Like my limbs in the air, but like, so
Your
like
leg?
basically like how you would deliver a baby in a hospital. Like I was like, you know, I propped up, like Jesse had my yoga bolster behind me, and like every time I was in a contraction, he would like push me up, and then like it was just like spread eagle.
Yeah.
That was it, right? Because and actually like my birth companion made a comment. She was like, that was really for your midwife. And probably was. It probably was. I didn't care at that point. I was so ready to be like done with it all. So I didn't care what happened at that point. I was like, just make it happen and get it out. Like, wow, like it was just
okay.
Couldn't take it anymore.
I wanted to catch up just on our comments really quick.
Okay.
So we have Alex said that her mom was at her birth, and that was great. And then another Leah said that her mom was at her birth, but she almost sent her home. So I just want to comment that there is that want to have our moms is so real, but they're not all are meant to be in that position with us, and sometimes can be a deterrent to our experience. So all variations of mom support are welcome, and I've had clients who don't have their moms in their lives, so being that person for them was really helpful and supportive. So use the birth pool. The birth pool I found made me like floaty and like too relaxed. And like as great as it is to take away some of that discomfort and some of that work, sometimes it slows you down. Yeah. And you need to meet the discomfort, and you need to meet the work. So you got out of the pool and you were directed to your bed, it sounds like, and in this position. So what did pushing feel like for you in that position? Because I know you wanted it over with. Did you have any, like looking back on it, were you comfortable in that position? Like it supported the midwife, but how did it feel for you?
Oh, in hindsight, like it was not comfortable for me, but like I just wanted it all to be over. I wanted to be like done with it. So I was just going to do whatever it needed to happen to like make him born, like get him out. Right. And so, I popped so many blood
Ooh.
vessels in my chin, my eyes. Like, I remember Jesse, he was like, your body was like pulsating. Your veins were just like everywhere, in your face, in your chest, and like everywhere. And he's
Wow.
like, he said actually like that was kind of a scary moment for him when I was actually like pushing,
Yeah.
because I was pushing so hard. I was like working so hard to like just get him out. And I remember like, I don't know how many pushes I did. I felt like eternity. I felt like I did so many pushes. I would love to know actually how many. I feel like it was probably like a lot. And I was just like, okay, it's gonna happen on this next one. It's gonna happen, and it didn't, and it didn't, and then it didn't, and I'm like, oh my god, like I was just
Oh
at that point, it was
no.
just like, what is going on? Like, why? What is
You're like, I got
happening?
the belief. The belief is here. I'm trying my
Yeah,
best.
yeah. And at one point, so remember the midwife said, like, okay, you're gonna feel like some burning here. You're gonna feel the ring of fire, and I'm like, okay, like I'm ready for it. I don't care. And like, it's funny because in that moment, you actually feel some relief before
Mm-hmm.
you hit that. You get
Mm-hmm.
like a relief, and I was like, whoa, like this is easy. I can do this. Like it's happening. You know, I was really like encouraged because I could see the finish line. You know, and
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
and then I felt like a slight burn. I was like, oh, that's nothing. Like, why do people talk about this ring of fire? And then the next one, what's the ring of fire?
Yeah.
So I was like,
That's
oh.
it.
And that, at that point, it was kind of funny. We talked about this after and we laughed about it. But like, I was like, this is fucked. Like, that was what I yelled.
I love the
My,
rawness of a woman in birth.
oh
Yes.
yeah,
It's so
yeah.
good.
And then I think like right after that, that was when he was born. Like, you know, a
Mm,
couple pushes after that. So wild.
motivating.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Like I just needed to like get that out. And actually my midwife said to me, like I think the day after when she came for like a checkup or whatever, she's like, no one's ever yelled that before. That was so funny. She's like, that's a good story. I'm gonna remember that one.
And like that's such a good point too, because when again, it's so primal. We talked about this yesterday with the sounds,
Yeah.
and I was listening to your videos of you making the sounds.
Yeah.
Um, it takes you back if you're someone who moaned, takes you back. But like, yeah, all the once a woman starts swearing, and like most of my clients do, I'm like, we're in it. This is
We're in
happening
it.
because all politeness goes out the window. You don't have time for polite. You don't have time to like reframe
Yeah.
what you're saying because of who's there. You're like, you just say what's on
Oh,
your mind.
oh yeah, yeah. Well, it's funny. So I yesterday you and Aaron talked about like people pleaser
Yeah.
mode, and I actually like went into that people pleaser mode when my midwife team showed up.
Mm-hmm.
I delayed in calling them. Um, so like I said, like I went into labor like early labor like Monday night, but then by Tuesday like things were happening. That was when I called my birth companion, but I didn't call my midwife team. I was actually supposed to go to an appointment, I think on Tuesday morning. And I just called them and I was like, like, I have a headache. Like, I have a migraine. Because I didn't, again, and this is something I want to bring up. Like, I had fear of like, I
Mm-hmm.
was very protective of like how much I shared with them, like what I shared with them because of what had happened in the past like 4 years with COVID. Like, I was very fearful of like the medical system, and I learned like what actually like midwifery is nowadays. Like it's really like one step outside of obstetrics.
Yeah.
And as someone who like didn't want anything to do with that, I was like, well, do I really like do I even want them there? Like I don't know. Like what are they gonna do?
Mm-hmm.
Are they gonna like make me go to the hospital? Like are they gonna you know what I mean? Like I had this like I was building up all this stuff in my mind and it's funny, like in hindsight again, like you learn so much, but like the like this team of midwives that I had, like they were actually a lot more aligned with like where I stand with a lot of things than I even really understood in like all my
Mm-hmm.
time of going to visit them. And
It,
so in a sense, like that's a bit of a shame for me. Like I put that block up and I sort of like protected that for myself. But like,
right.
little did I know that they kind of like a lot were aligned in a lot more ways than I thought.
Yeah, it's very interesting to think about. You trusted your body, you trusted birth, but you didn't trust your care providers because of the like social circumstances of those times and the political circumstances and the medical system. And so it makes you think about standing in your truth and standing in your power and not worrying about the outcome so much. I mean, obviously there's so much on the line though with this being, you
Yeah.
know, your baby,
Yeah.
your pregnancy, your body. But it's interesting hypothetically to look back and be like, if I had just let, you know, those little whispers that come out for people, for, you know, assessing out whether someone's aligned with you right
Yeah.
now or someone's awake or whatever you want to call it, what would have happened to your experience,
Yeah.
to your story of giving birth
Totally.
if they whispered back as
Well, and
something that maybe about
there was a hint of that actually in my very first appointment with my midwife team, and actually she ended up being the one who was there when Miles was born. We got talking about just like I would drop little hints myself, right, with every appointment, and like I said at one point, you know, yeah, I'm doing like this birth workshop, you know, with a birth companion. She's like, oh, a birth companion. And so we got talking about that. And she's like, yeah, there's this like a whole underground railroad of like women just like helping people like give birth outside the system. And it's like pretty crazy. Yeah. Like she's like, it's pretty wild. Like what's going on right now. And so we kind of like talked about that a little bit, but I was still like very apprehensive of like, oh, but how aligned are you? Because like in my understanding, like midwives had to like abide by all the same things that were happening in hospital setting, and I was not down with that at all. And so, you know, it really like it put up a barrier for me. And it's kind of funny, like, you know, to sort of jump to the end of like this birth story of mine. You know, we had 4 days of labor at home, and then I ended up having to go into hospital care after Miles was born because he had really high bilirubin. And again, it was like a humbling moment for me because all of the fears that I had, you know, within that system of like the medical care system, it all like ended up in my experience not to be true.
I'm curious for that.
Yeah. Every nurse and doctor that we interacted with in the hospital system, like in our time there, was like the complete opposite of what I thought it was going to be. I had a lot of fear around like being judged for not, you know, not getting vaccinated or whatever. I had a lot of fear around like what interventions they would try to like push me into. And like I questioned everything. And then I was like, I kind of had to make that decision of like to get a ROGAM shot or not. And for anyone who doesn't know, like if you're a negative blood type, you are presented with the option to get a ROGAM in pregnancy and after the baby is born, which I learned I had to do so much digging on all of that and like understanding why we do that. And it's funny because not all countries even offer the first shot in pregnancy. And like you later learn like, wow, that's a blood product that you're introducing into your system. Like, why are we giving pregnant women shots in pregnancy? Like, it just doesn't make a lot of sense, right? But yeah, so then I was kind of like, that was my, like, Miles was fine at that point. Like, he was dehydrated. So that was another thing that, you know, was another learning point for me, a learning curve. And actually my, Alex Bargy, who we run this account together, Conscious Birth, she told me, because she had her little girl about a month before, and she was like, yeah, you gotta like nurse right away. And I was like, okay, yeah, I'll nurse right away. And like, I don't know what happened. Like, I think I got a quick lesson from my midwife. My sister and my mom stuck around for a little bit. My sister kind of showed me a few things, and I was like, okay, cool, yeah. And by that time, I think it was like probably like 4 a.m, and everyone was so tired, and we were like, okay, let's just go to bed. And then I like was like, hey, he's tired. He had a long journey too. I had a long journey. Like, let's just rest. Like, totally underestimating like how important that is. So like new moms out there, like do not underestimate how much. Yeah, don't skip that. You have to get them the liquids they need because that's what contributed to the high bilirubin. He wasn't urinating, and that's how you pass it, right? So he was probably dehydrated.
Chelsea had
but
the same experience. She's going to tell her story. Part of her, well, she's got 4 births to talk about.
Oh, wow.
But
yeah.
She said she had to go to the hospital with her 4th during COVID too for the exact same thing, for the high count of bilirubin.
Yeah.
And she was questioning the same things.
Yeah.
You know, she had the same fears, the same questions. And like, I also feel like you're not sure, like, are they going to pull one over on me?
That
Like,
was
you're
it.
constantly like on
Yep.
alert. Like,
Yep.
where are they coming from? What have they got in their hands?
That was it. That was totally me. I questioned everybody's motivation. I questioned every little thing they were doing. Like, I was probably a nightmare to them, but I ended up kind of like chumming it up with some of them. And then I actually ended up opening up to a few of them of like why I was so being probably a pain in their ass. Because like I just didn't trust. And I told them that. I said, I'm sorry, but like COVID has ruined my perception of like what your field is all about. Like, I know it's not you directly, but I'm like, this is what I've seen, and like this is why I feel like I have to advocate so much and be. It's funny, you know, when you become a mother, you realize you have to get really uncomfortable with people pretty quick, because if you don't want something, if you don't want to do something, you have to stand up for yourself. And like, it's
And
that
are you
shift.
being a pain in the ass? Are you really being a pain in the ass just because
Yeah.
you're standing in your
Well,
truth
I
and your
don't
power?
care. I didn't care if I was or not, right? But like some people do, right?
But it's so funny that you like even you framed it in like in that way, right? And it's all you were doing was asking a question or a series of questions
Yeah.
to make a decision. That's
Yeah.
all you were doing. Yet we put ourselves in this box of like, oh God, I'm being a troublemaker, or like I'm gonna hurt their feelings, or I'm gonna hurt their ego about their work. And like I feel like every time we try to unpack what's happening in birth to women, people get individually hurt. They take it personally, and you're like, it's
Yeah.
not
It's not about
personal.
you. Yeah. Yeah. Totally. That's so true. And like that was another big lesson like my sister and I kind of took away from my experiences. Like there is no room for ego in birth. Like nobody, everyone, if you're going to go to a hospital and have a baby, like you need a sign at your door that says check your ego here, because it is not welcomed. Honestly, like that is like the one thing that I have just like held on to, because like it's not, you're like you just said, it's not about other people and other people's feelings and whatever. um yeah, I don't know,
And
ego, big one.
I think that's a really great way to put it, and a great way to like unpack the system. And that's like so many conversations that we'll have later. But
Yes.
yeah, Chelsea was saying, well, Leah said like she can imagine having to deal with that during that time, and like that's really heavy. I do want to hold space for that because it's a lot. That's not something you should have ever had to experience as a pregnant woman, and as a mother, you know, being born as a mother yourself, not the experience you should have ever had. And Chelsea was saying that like, yeah, she was hearing stories of moms and babies being separated in the hospital, and that was really terrifying to think about too. Like
Yeah.
you don't even have, and nobody had this understanding really, including the people in the system, but like you didn't know what was going to happen. So it's like you didn't even have a place to go from in order
Yep.
to even ask questions. And yeah, what a
Yeah.
confusing and fucked up, horrible
Big time.
time.
Yeah, it's so true. Oh, Claire. Hi, Claire. She's here.
Claire says we were groomed at such an early age to be a good person and not question authority.
Yeah.
100%.
So true.
And I feel like even the strongest of us, like, Claire's an advocate, I'm an advocate, and like, I don't know about you, Claire, but there's times in my personal life where I'm working in the system and I get steamrolled and I make a decision I didn't want to make. And I'm like, how did I, someone who does this work all the time, get sucked into this? But it's so true. We're very socialized, we're groomed, to be the nice little girl and to listen to daddy, to the patriarchy. Right? Like,
It's so true. And like and I think a lot of women like do feel that way. They're like, well, I don't know, like I'm not the expert, I'm just the one having the baby. And like we kind of talked about before, like we defer that responsibility onto like healthcare providers. And like that was where I again, when I was pregnant, like I just had to be like, no, like responsible, you have to be responsible now, and like you have to like back up whatever decision you're making, and you have to have all your, like you have to know why you're making it. And I just held myself, I guess, to that higher account, because I knew I wanted a home birth, and so I had to like accept responsibility for like my choices.
love that. I love that concept of like radical responsibility, right? Like you knew
Yes.
you knew what you were up against, that you were up against something big.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. But it's again, like kind of just to go back, like when after like we, were leaving, we got out of the hospital and everything, like I was, like I said, I kind of mentioned this, like I was humbled by my experience, by the people there. The judgment, like the fear of judgment that I had, like that was a big one for me. I was really afraid of what those people, like people in the healthcare setting, would think of me, because I took like a different road than a lot of others, and
You were met with
yeah, that
positive.
I was met with a lot of positivity, and also like everything happens for a reason. Like I had this night
Mm-hmm.
nurse. She worked a few nights that I was there. She sat with me for every feeding at night
Oh,
and showed me
beautiful.
different things, like showed me different like ways to hold them and like different techniques, and if it's hurting, it shouldn't hurt, like breastfeeding should not
Mm-hmm.
hurt. Like she actually used to be a lactation consultant. She told me
Oh,
this.
wow.
And like that was such a blessing, because if I had have just been at home, my house would have been a revolving door, and I would
Yeah.
have underestimated like how important it is to like
Pay
nurse.
attention. Yeah.
Yeah, and like actually like be able to have that time to focus, like that
Mm-hmm.
quietness, which again, also I think as someone who's like, I love a lot of people around, like I love like that energy. When you're learning how to breastfeed and like your baby's learning how to breastfeed, like you need solitude.
Mm-hmm.
You need that.
Mm-hmm.
And that
Yeah.
that woman, that nurse, like she was such a blessing. She ended up being such a
Mm-hmm.
blessing for me in those like very early days. So, I'm like, again, everything, like
Everything
I said this from day
happening.
one. Everything happens for a reason. Everything
Mm-hmm.
is meant to like unfold the way that it should. And yeah, and like it did. And then yeah, it's
Absolutely.
just like a total, like, again, another like shift in my like mentality of like, what is going on in the system, and not all the
Mm-hmm.
all like these things, these stories that we hear, like we can't like paint everybody with the same brush, because like
Yeah. Yeah. I
some
think
people
that's so
are,
important.
yeah, because some people like some people didn't were on the same page as me, like they didn't agree with like what was going on, but they're like, but I also like have a job to do and whatever, and so you have to make concessions at some point. And I don't know, it was just like, I loved what Aaron was kind of talking about this yesterday, like just like meeting like people halfway, like you know
Yes.
not
Conversation over confrontation.
yeah, yeah, and like that was that was my humbling experience in the hospital.
And I think it speaks to what you really learn going through birth and becoming a mother is that there's a lot of pressure and a lot of old behaviors, I think, to be rigid in your identity and rigid in, like, as soon as you kind of form an opinion, like older generations hold on to those very strongly. But I feel like what birth teaches us and what motherhood teaches us is to be really open to whatever comes our way,
Yeah,
and that we don't know how we're going to feel about something or experience something until we're in it.
yeah,
And then we're just going to make the best choices that we can in that moment.
yeah,
And like everything is going to keep coming up to teach us lessons. Our kids teach us lessons. The experiences, everything that we everything I keep encountering as a mother, brings me on a different, like, we keep pivoting and we keep, trying to move with it the best we
yeah,
can. And
yeah,
you have to be fluid, you have to be open and fluid, and you just never know. And there's all kinds of helpers along the way, right?
yes, yeah, totally. I love that. That's a good way of putting it. Helpers. I like that.
Isn't that like Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood? Didn't he say that? I think there's
Did he?
something.
I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
know. Um, it's
Funny guy.
funny though, like I had all these little signs. Like so on the first morning, like at home still, so like Miles was born just after midnight. It was like the next day, and Jesse and Miles and I were just like outside in our backyard, enjoying the sunshine. And this like brown bird like landed on this tree that we have. that kind of like hangs over our driveway.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I said to Justin, like, what is that? Because it looked like a robin, but I had never seen a brown robin before. And he goes, oh, it's a robin, but it's a female. And I just started like crying in that instant because my nanny Healy loved
Oh,
robins. No, sorry, cardinals. It was a cardinal. It was
cardinal.
a brown
Oh, you saw
cardinal.
like the peachy. Yeah.
Yeah, and I had never seen a female before, and I was like, "That's my Nanny Healy." It was like her favorite bird. My mom got
Mm-hmm.
my sister and I these like Christmas ornaments that go on our tree that are like red cardinals, and I was like, "That's her!" Like, and I was just
Mm-hmm.
so like, it was such a sign, right? And then I saw her again, like on our back like fence, like later that day, and I took a
Oh,
little video of that actually. And then when I had to go into the hospital, my sister and my mom like came a couple days, and like I just had to like get out of that stuffy like room, and I
yeah.
needed some natural light. And the weather was gorgeous. It was so warm and beautiful in like those early September days. And so we would walk across. There's a park across the street from the hospital, and I did so many laps. I walked so much like after having a baby.
Amazing.
I was like, I had so much energy. It's really crazy. I
That's
actually
funny.
made a pot of soup like the morning that we woke up at home. We were at home. We were chilling. I made soup that day. I made this like amazing minestrone soup, and it actually
Ooh.
ended up being so great because like I had it with me in the hospital. I didn't have to eat
Yeah.
your
That's
gross
funny.
food, but yeah, I saw so many cardinals like on those days. Like I went outside. It's crazy because like Miles turned 1 this September, and I intentionally, I like end of August, like September, I was looking for cardinals because I'm like, I gotta know if this is like, it's just like maybe the time of year, like maybe they're just like really active this time of year.
Okay,
I didn't,
right.
I barely saw any cardinals this year. So I'm like,
There
I
you
don't
go.
know, like, was
More
it a sign? Like,
confirmation.
yeah, like so
I had a
cool.
client in the hospital. So speaking of like these signs and spiritual moments in birth, I had a client in the hospital, and we had just, I love talking about spiritual things, spooky things during birth. It's so fun. There's like 3 topics I love talking about. Chickens, like having your own chickens and how fun that is. And spiritual and spooky stuff. So we were talking about how like, yeah, she's like sitting on a birth ball and like rocking away in the hospital. And we're like, yeah, you can really call in like your ancestors during birth. And she's telling the story about her ancestors, I think being midwives, and the light went
Yeah,
off and on in a hospital, which does not
does not
happen. Like
happen.
there's many fail-safe systems for those that power in that building. So
Yeah.
that was amazing confirmation that
Oh, I love that.
we
Well,
have
they say like the
her
portal is
ancestors.
open, right? Like, and actually,
Totally.
I can't remember what book I was reading this in, and it's going through like the different cultures and how they protect the birth space, what they
Mm,
do, like different rituals and things that they do. I remember reading one, men in the community used to dress up in like these kind of like scary spooky masks because they were warding off any bad energy
ooh,
on the mother and the baby who what they would describe as like closer to the veil of
mm-hmm,
like this like in between,
mm-hmm.
and like you're just like, oh, you're, because you're like opening physically, you're more I guess perceptive to like, this whole spiritual thing, and it's kind of
Absolutely.
so interesting. I totally believe in all that stuff too.
So fascinating. Oh, I love that. I love that you were calling her in during your pregnancy and that you got to have that moment with her
Yeah.
spiritually at the end too.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
it's just funny because like I've often said like I look for those signs, but I don't often see them, and like I'm always
Mm,
like kind of like saying like, like, oh, like show me a sign, but like I don't see them. And then like in those moments when I was oh my god, those days in the hospital were like a roller coaster of emotions. I
yes.
was like, I felt manic at times. Like I was so up and down because it was like once Miles was good, because like of course I'm questioning everything because we had a very like delayed cord clamp. Like Erin was talking
Mhm.
yesterday about hers, and mine was like an hour.
Okay, there you go. Yeah, it's good to
And
hear this stuff.
Yeah, and like I question, like, is that why, like, he got too much? Like, did he, because
Mm.
he was so lethargic, right? He was so, his blood, and when we got to the hospital and they were trying to draw those blood samples, like his blood was like molasses. Like it was
Oh, really
so
interesting.
thick. Yeah, like they couldn't even get a good like drop of his blood to like test the bilirubin
Ooh,
score. Yeah, and like so I
poor dude.
question, like, is that because like I wanted that delayed core clamp, but and this was something I wanted to bring up today. Like, if you want
Mm.
that, really think about and have the discussion with your providers. Like, how long is delayed to you?
Hmm.
Because I knew I wanted a delayed core clamp, but I didn't realize like delayed
Yeah.
technically is like 5 minutes, right? Or whatever. Like that's delayed. But like, so when they were like, okay, I remember like Andrea, my midwife, saying, okay, the cord has stopped pulsing. It's light. Can we cut it? And I was like, I just like delivered him, and I was like so like overwhelmed,
Mm.
and I had no energy at this point. I had like no
Why are
voice.
you
Like
asking me this?
I was just like, oh yeah,
Mm.
and I was like, no, like I just give me a minute. Like I just needed to collect myself, and like Miles was kind of taking these like really shallow little breaths, and they did like the suction thing on him, but he was still like it was just this tiny little breath. I don't know if you could hear them in any of the videos I sent you, but it was like wheezy, and I could tell there was
Like
still stuff on
labored.
his chest. Yeah, and so
Mm.
I was trying to ask them to like do that, and then so in that mix, we just like forgot about the cord, and then they were so focused on like him, like getting his breathing right, and like they left the room at one point, and I said to my sister, like, I wanted them to suction again, and she goes, "Well, you do it." And
I
so I
love
was
that.
like, okay. So I did it. So I like put my mouth around like his
Yeah,
nose and his mouth, and I just like sucked. And then I spit out whatever it was on the towel. And then he took a big cry, and like we were good after that. But
Mm.
like
Your
that,
intuition.
yeah, but then that time frame, it had been like an hour. And so yeah, like so then I questioned, like, oh, should I have like left that on that long? Like, should I have done that? I don't know. Like, yeah, Claire just said, I just wonder whether it was the long labor would affect it. Yeah, maybe. Yeah,
Yeah,
Claire was my birth companion
babies
for a few
get
months.
tired.
Totally.
Babies,
Yeah.
like, babies are something I think we can start to conceptualize is that babies also are doing the work
Yes.
of being born. Like, it's
Yeah.
not just your body pushing them out. They're
Yeah.
also doing work. And so, yeah, they do. They do. I find they get lethargic because they've been through it, especially if they have a long, uncomfortable
Yeah.
pushing phase.
Yeah.
Like, they're really being squeezed in that space, and they're fine and they're safe, but it's arduous on them. And so, yeah, we can see lethargic babies, but it's up to mom and the rest of the room to put those two things together.
Yeah.
Um, and there's times where, like, a really good example of where this gets so stupidly fucked up is when moms have saline when they're going to prepare for like a C-section birth, or if they have it with Pitocin or something. They get bags and bags of saline to deliver these medicines, okay?
Mm.
So after birth, they're really filled with fluid. They're
Swollen.
swollen. Guess
Yeah.
who else? Guess who else has this fluid? Your baby.
Babies.
Your baby also has this fluid in them. And so what I see a lot of times is that babies are weighed and it's not taken into account that they have had this fluid. And so then baby drops all of that fluid, just like we as moms do, passes through our bodies.
Mm.
But on a chart, it says baby weighed this much. Oh my God, now they only weigh this
Mm.
much. And they don't take into account what the context of
Oh,
of the birth of the
wow.
situation. And then they start trying to force formula, blah, blah, blah. That's the whole conversation. But just to give you an example of like, you have to put into context what Claire's saying is like, it could just be, that he also was working really
Yeah.
hard
Yeah.
during this labor.
Yeah.
So
It's true.
there's a lot of moving pieces, a lot of things we need to be aware of about the birthing process to then, understand and make decisions if we are entered into the system for
Yes.
health reasons, like the
Totally.
bilirubin.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not sure about the placenta causing that. Something that we can totally look into, just out of curiosity.
Oh,
And
that I
anybody
have.
else?
So there's kind of an
Yeah.
interesting part of my birth story there. So
Okay.
we had this one, the backup midwife came who I didn't know. Like, she was not on my team. I'd never met her. And she just had like bad vibes. Like, she was, I feel like maybe she was newer or something, like not as much experience, because she was very frantic. She showed up in a mask
Yeah.
at my house, and I was like, "What?
Right.
Like, what are you doing right now?"
Red
And
flag.
not the vibe we were going for. And she was like very frantic about like getting like his heart rate, taking all like these stats, like very like on me. And at one point I remember Val being like, "I don't think she wants you to do that." Like, she spoke up for me because I, like, again, like I said, I couldn't speak. And so I think that was when she kind of like took a step back, because I didn't want all like the hands all over him. Like, I just wanted to like take a beat, right? Like, that's all I wanted, like a hot minute. And and um and then the whole thing with my delayed cord clamp, and then it was like it had been an hour, and Claire and I laughed about this after. One of the midwives made a comment like, the it could detach from the placenta. It's been an hour. This is very dangerous. And they were like, you need to get this, like, your placenta out right now.
Panic,
And like
panic.
you panic. And I was not panicked. I was like, I got this, guys. Like, chill. And I just stood up, like, I think it was my sister, like, maybe helped me like get up, and literally like one contraction and out it came. Like, that was it. And
Yeah.
and I was like, whoa. And then like someone, I can't remember, someone said, like, made this comment like, your cervix snapped shut. And I'm like, it took my cervix 4 days to open. Like, nothing is snapping shut. Like,
She's not
right
gonna
after.
snap. Yeah.
Nothing's snapping
Yeah.
shut. Like, guys, come on. And
Oh
I
dear.
thought I thought it's just like weird. I don't know where you would get that idea, but like, no, nothing is snapping at all after that.
And the body knows, like your body knows what it's
Yes.
doing. You know what you're doing, and you just needed like, okay, I'll try. Like I'll get in a different position and we'll see what
Yeah.
happens.
Like, I
But there's
literally stood
no
up. It was
emergency
one
here.
contraction and out it came. That's the other thing. Like, I guess like you don't, your body has like been through so much, and like it actually, when I thought about it afterwards, like, it surprised me like how many contractions you still have even after you've had the baby.
Yes,
Like,
that is a shock to many moms.
like
Yeah.
lighter, obviously, much more manageable, obviously, but like
Mm.
just very crazy, very
Not what you
interesting.
would expect or want after you work so hard
Yeah.
to have
But
it be
it
over
was
and it's
wild though.
still
Like,
happening.
yeah, like the hormones though. Like, I felt I was on like cloud nine. Like, after all of that, like, I had so much energy. I was like, I was so elated, and like it was
Mm.
just so, I don't know. I have so much energy. Like, I had like 10 coffees without all the jitters and like the queasy stomach. That's how it felt. Like, just very, very like,
Yeah.
just like
You
floating.
did it. You met your goal and
Yeah.
you worked so hard to get there. And your team was there. Like, I think maybe we can wrap up with how you felt about your partner after,
Oh
like,
yeah. Oh my God.
through all of
I
that with
like,
him.
I shared this with you before, but like, I was like so attracted to him after all of that. Like, it was just like so, just like primal, I want to say. Like, I just like, he helped me through this, like, every stage, and he was a rock. He told me
Amazing.
afterwards, he was like there were moments where he's like, I was scared, like, I was
Aw.
really scared, but he like never showed it. I never saw it. I never got that from him at all. And yeah, it was funny, like, on the like last day of labor, like, my birth companion had offered me some wine, just like birth management, and I had been turning it down for like a couple days, because I was like, no, like, I was getting such bad heartburn at the end, and I was like, I'm not gonna have heartburn and these like contractions, no way, like, not doing it. And then on like the very last day, Jesse said he like took a shot of whiskey, and like he's like, you're gonna drink that fucking wine, and I'm like, okay, I'm drinking it. So I did, and it actually like helped immensely. Like, if there is one thing I can recommend, like, if you're gonna go au natural, get some wine. It really helped. But yeah, no,
It helps you
Jesse,
it helps you relax. It helps your
it did.
body
I
reduce
was
that
laughing.
tension.
I was laughing in between like contractions. I remember like just feeling so giggly and like, and then it was like, shh, okay, like, yeah, it was. But you know, Jesse was a rock, and I just like, we had some conversations about it after, and I said like, I have like never been more attracted to you. Like,
Aw,
like, I can't believe like you were in such like your true form of like what it is to be like a man, like being in your masculine. Like he held
it's
me
amazing.
physically. He like never wavered. Like I mean I'm sure I could have tore the arms off of him at times. And he never winced. Like he never showed me if he was in any discomfort, and I'm sure he was. Um
Mm-hmm.
and like
Wow,
and then
that's
after
beautiful.
like when we had to go to the hospital, like my house was kind of a disaster, and like he wasn't feeling well. I think a few people after like the late nights and everything, everyone's like immune systems were just so like
Yeah.
down. And I know my sister and my mom weren't feeling so great either, and like Jesse wasn't feeling great, and he felt so bad because like I went to the hospital like essentially just me and Miles because like he was not feeling well and he didn't want to like pass anything on to Miles or me. And oh, I bit him apparently. um,
Was at your birth, and
yes,
she's reminding you that
yeah.
you bit your husband.
There you go. But he felt
What
so
a man.
bad. He felt so bad that he couldn't be there with me. And like, it was like the first, like second night, whatever it was. And he cleaned the entire house. And so like, I went home to such a neat, oh yeah, like, I'm like, you are an angel. Like, it was
Into
actually,
my lady bit.
it was like, yeah, it was the best. He was such a champ. Like, it just showed
Amazing.
me like what he was capable of too. And I like,
Hmm.
just love him even more for it.
Yeah, and the birth experience also makes the father too, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
there's
and
different
that's what
ways men can participate.
yeah, and like that's what I like want to. I hope like I hope more men can like step up to the plate in those experiences for their ladies because it just like this is what life is all about. You know, these big moments and like how
Absolutely.
you handle yourself in those moments is such a testament to like your character. And
Yes.
like I feel like men are robbed of like that experience a little bit if they're not taking like ownership of like what their role is in it. And I
Amen
just
right
like
there.
yeah, like I feel like it's such an opportunity to like build your bond with your partner even more, like strengthen that
Yes.
bond because you go through something together. Like you walk through that, you know, that door together
Mm-hmm.
and it's like magic. It's so it can be so magical, and like just take
Yes,
the
I love that.
opportunity to do that. I don't know. That's my final word on it all.
Beautiful. I think that's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing all of your story and
Oh,
all of your wisdom. So
oh, I
special.
still have so much to learn. So I love it.
I'm gonna share some more of your pictures
Okay,
to
good.
contextualize this conversation. Of course, we'll share this live. But yeah, I just want to say thanks for everyone for watching.
Yeah.
Thanks to you for doing this with me.
Thank you for
Um,
hosting. I love
yeah,
that you're doing this. I love it because I don't know, women do need that opportunity to like tell their story and like recount things because I think for women who have those like traumatic
mhm.
like experiences, you need to you need to understand it in some way, shape, or form. And like by being able to like retell it and understand it more, like I feel like that's part of the healing and so yeah.
You're putting
I'm so
the pieces together.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. So thank you for doing this for us ladies out here.
You're welcome. So we're going to continue this on Monday with Chelsea. Chelsea's going to share her stuck baby story and probably more about her other birth experiences too. So tune back in on Monday. We're going to take the weekend to rest, recover, and build ourselves back up so we can have more of these conversations. So we'll see you then.
All right. Thanks everyone. Thanks, Nessa.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.